Now that Grief's been banned, we have to start answering some important questions about the legacy metagame, like, how good's mono black? Hello folks, Phil Gallagher, aka ThrabenU here for another legacy video. And Keith sent me a donation deck list a while ago that just assumed that Grief was going to get banned. And the general idea was, what does mono black look like in a post-Grief world? And we're going to try to answer that today. Barrowgoyf is one of the more interesting cards here, as this offers a source of card advantage while also being a source of lifelink, and it's a Death Toucher. And Death Touch is wonderful in a Psychic Frog world, as your sort of Tarmogoyf style card is likely to be big, but it might not be the biggest thing on the table at all times. We have a bunch of removal here, with some Fatal Pushes and Murderous Cuts that can go and get rid of our Psychic Frogs, and we have some other things that can serve as removal for smaller creatures. One of the things that I thought was really interesting here was Plague Engineer. And this was a card that I had not given a lot of thought about until I actually saw a tweet from Dukes on Twitch, who was saying, I think we need to recall the Engineer, as it can deal with Eldrazi Spawn token. It's just kind of preemptively, if you're doing it off something like Dark Ritual, it can help you against the insect tokens from something like a Springheart Nantucket that you might see out of an Elvish Reclaimer deck of some kind, and it can help you against cats if you run into something like an energy deck list. And I thought that was a pretty good observation. And Keith must have come to a similar conclusion with an entire playset of Plague Engineers being thrown into the mix here. As far as where our deck falls, we're definitely on the aggro spectrum here, hoping to curve out something like a Stalker into a Voidwalker, into an opposition agent or Goyf most of the time, and our hands that have a Dark Ritual will allow us to be more explosive. We can use Vexing Bauble as something that can give us a turn 1 play when we don't have a Dark Ritual or a Stalker or a Thoughtseize. And so our curve actually kind of looks nice. Like with 18 1-drops here, we're not gutted at the higher CMCs that we might be in some other versions of the deck list. Note that we're not messing around with Reanimate and Animate Dead here. We are playing a couple of Trolls to serve as effective extra copies of lands though. And more of our late game is going to come from cards like the Barrowgoyf. And we do have the ability to become the Monarch out of the sideboard. Court of Locthwain is one that we haven't played a lot here. So when it ETBs, you become the Monarch. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of target opponent's library. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiles. Your mana taps for any color. If you're the Monarch until end of turn, you may cast a spell from among cards exiled with it without paying its mana cost. So that is just a free spell from your opponent's deck every turn, assuming that you actually do hit a spell. So yeah, let's jump into a league here, see how mono black feels in the post-Grief world. Should you need any of the cards for this or another deck list, please consider checking out my sponsor, TOAmagic.com. Tales of Adventure is a great store. If you're ordering online, you always get free shipping. If you're thinking ahead to a major event such as Vegas, you could place your order online, pick it up in person, and promo code ThrabenU will save you 5% on your order as well. Let's battle. Yo dog. I heard you liked Dauthi Voidwalker. Opponent is passing the turn. We've got Thoughtseize to disrupt a potential combo hand, and then we are going to throw creatures at our... I can't make this shit up. Okay, let's go. Otherworldly Gaze. That makes me nervous. Our opponent is probably playing a dredge deck of some kind. So the Thoughtseize, yeah, there's Poxwalkers. So the Thoughtseize could end up putting something a little scary into the graveyard here. So my opponent does not currently have black mana to cast Cabal Therapy from hand. My opponent currently does not have 2 mana. My opponent has Icarid in graveyard. And getting Cabal Therapied for Dauthi Voidwalker would be rough. I think I'm taking the castable Careful Study here. Pass turn. And unique username 3. Let's talk about this. Please do not called shot name Dauthi Voidwalker here. Oh shit, no Icarid to play. Let's fucking go. Let's fucking go. Oh my god, that's such a big deal. Holy shit. Anyway, I started Dauthi Voidwalking. This is a devastating thing to happen this early in a game. Woo! All right. What do we have in terms of graveyard hate here? Very Macabre is totally reasonable. Plague Engineer does some stuff sometimes. It gets really weird when Bridge from Below gets involved, though, and could actively be bad in those circumstances. I can do some of the damping sphere type stuff. The powder keg is, I guess, playable. I think I'm going to start by looking at the main deck. So like this isn't great. The Vexing Baubles can be fine for something like a Dread Return. They're not overly exciting though. Plague Engineer can do some stuff for Icarid or Poxwalkers. Poxwalker is a zombie? Yeah, 3/1 zombie. I think I'm going to play these. I can always put them on something different if it looks like a Bridge from Below situation is going to be a problem. The Opposition Agent is probably not fantastic. Orcish Bowmasters is going to be a high variance card. I think we're going to go down on these. I'm keeping Thoughtseizes. I don't think the game goes long enough that I need that as a body. I think I can probably cut that, run 19 lands. Like, I'm looking to have 2 lands. Like, we're looking to play a Dauthi Voidwalker. Emperor of Bones, also pretty reasonable. Let's try running this and not some of the other generic anti-combo cards. This has a Dauthi Voidwalker. My opponent has mulliganed once. If I lose the Dauthi Voidwalker to a Thoughtseize effect or a Cabal Therapy in the first 2 turns, my hand is pretty weak. I don't know that I am mulliganing hands that just have Dauthi Voidwalker, though. The thing about these otherworldly gaze, I'm going to finish this sentence, decks, is that they tend to be slower and not have Lion's Eye Diamond was going to be the tail end of that sentence. So I don't think I have to just go and mulligan directly to a, like, Dark Ritual based hand. All right, so how bad is it? Yeah, and so thinking about Plague Engineer, once something like a Bridge from Below has happened, things are just pretty bad for me. So Poxwalkers is now going to trigger. So these come back whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand. My opponent has seen 40 cards this turn and is going to Cabal Therapy me into Oblivion. I should maybe just concede here. Yeah, Force of Despair is a good name. Maybe just optimal to not show my opponent more things that exist within my deck list. Like, I think I'm just losing the game, right? Opponent could go like 1, 2, 3, cast Dread Return, get a giant troll. Yeah, while creating a large number of things, the Poxwalkers come back immediately. Okay, so now I know that my opponent is more turbo than I thought. So some of this damping sphere type stuff is going to be a little better than I thought. On the draw, I could do, sorry, on the play, this is a little better, just helping with some of the zombie tokens. We could go down on some removal, like the removal is a touch awkward. I am really looking to kind of ignore blockers or wipe out creatures in mass. So keeping, I don't know, like the Fatal Pushes and the Edicts are so mid most of the time now. Hard to get the called shot with Disruptor Flute. I can just play things that have power and toughness, keep mana in the deck. It's like not the best. Now that I know they have LED, Null Rod becomes a little better. Null Rod while playing Powder Keg. Question mark, question mark, question mark. Something like this probably isn't too far off. This is fine. So this is a Thoughtseize to get me to turn 2. I can use this to protect this Dauthi Voidwalker, put the Dauthi Voidwalker in play. I have Emperor of Bones for if my opponent just like blind Cabal Therapies me and names Dauthi Voidwalker. My opponent has kept their 7. We would have loved a Dark Ritual hand. Okay, so my opponent has an Otherworldly Gaze and a Breakthrough, as well as a Cabal Therapy. The Bridge from Below draws first and then discards. As long as my opponent doesn't take something like an LED, that's probably fine. I think I like taking the Cabal Therapy and just trying to resolve Dauthi Voidwalker on turn 2. So we'll see if I get maximum punished with like an LED here. We do not. So that's them fetching around Opposition Agent. Nice. Perfectly happy with that backup here. Dauthi Voidwalker. My opponent will Otherworldly Gaze in response. All right. There's a Bridge from Below in graveyard if that ends up being relevant. But now, presumably, I am going to just put another Dauthi Voidwalker into play and my opponent will concede the game. Oh shit, that's really good. Dark Ritual, Dauthi Voidwalker. I guess I should have done this already. All right. We are surveilling. So we have some interesting things in other zones here. I don't think anything that I am going to get rid of. I think my opponent's just going to concede here. These creatures were super well positioned versus my opponent's deck. We got some free wins here, even if we weren't 100% sure exactly how we wanted to approach the post-sideboard games.
Today's video is sponsored by Moxfield.com, and honestly, they're just the best at what they do. If you need to keep your deck lists online, this is the way to do it. They have all sorts of different viewing options. You can condense that text if you like things to be tight. You can make them visual grids. You can put them in stacks. You've got all sorts of different ways to kind of view and visualize your deck lists. And they also have some really cool functionality, like allowing you to see playtest hands and even fully playtest your decks. So check them out.
Okay, so this hand is going to be a keep. I can adjust it a little bit based on what my opponent is doing here, and they're going first. Big mana, understood. I'd love to just draw like a wasteland, negative. Okay, so I think I can wait one. Oh, it's not one turn, it's multiple turns for Opposition Agent. Awkward. I can Stalker plus Thoughtseize next turn. I guess I will just Opposition Agent in this turn cycle. Yeah, that's a lot of mana. We'll see if I'm punished for not playing Opposition Agent out at sorcery speed with something like a crop rotation here. And yeah. Although, like, what would my opponent be doing with the crop rotation, right? So, free combat. Show me what you're working with over there. Kozilek's Command. Kozilek's Command. All right, you got it. So, there's goodies in hand, Cloudpost and Wasteland, sure. It is a little hard for my opponent to Once Upon a Time and also play the thing in the same turn cycle. Not impossible. So this is 4 total mana, but it's only 3 if green is involved. So that leaves my opponent with 1, 2, 3, potentially 4 mana. I think I'm going to take that and get the Stalker into play and attempt to Thoughtseize away the relevant card next turn. I've got some very big end game cards to be thinking about. Think like the All Is Dust, Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger type cards as this game goes on. That's a little bit of a weird draw. That can be a little bit of mana denial. I don't think I am interested in that. I'll just put my opponent to 12, cast the Thoughtseize. My opponent can respond with Once Upon a Time and put a land into their hand rather than something that I take. Glacial Chasm, sure. Opponent is floating 2 mana with Spirit Guides. I don't have mana available to Bowmaster in response to this draw a card. I will just cast this and pass. So there's the cycle. Glacial Chasm represents a decent amount of time. The sacrificing of a land like definitely matters. On it not going for the chasm just yet. I'll go ahead and bash on in. We'll see if my opponent is just like chumping right now to preserve life. They are. 13. I will Troll Cycle, get a swamp, play a swamp. 3, 6, 7, 8 mana showing already. The 9th mana is maybe not the most important. I think I'm just gonna pass the turn. The One Ring, I'm gonna respond to that one. Play Orcish Bowmasters. In your face. So this fogs my opponent for a turn. So I get an Orcish Bowmaster trigger. I'm going to point it at this spawn, even though my opponent can sack it to fizzle this trigger. I think I just want to take that out of play. That is going to be worth potentially 3 life later. Ooh, buddy. 3, 6, 7, 8 damage showing, 9 damage showing. Playing this represents lethal next turn. Sacking this represents 9 damage without leaning in further to losing to All Is Dust. I might need to just play the extra body because something like Ulamog that takes out 2 of my things at the same time might be problematic. What if my opponent draws 2 cards? 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, not quite lethal. This is lethal with that. It's better if my opponent Ulamogs or something. Let's do this one and hope that we don't run into All Is Dust specifically. Glacial Chasm is a bit of a problem. It prevents all damage that would be dealt to them. I can ping them. It just doesn't accomplish anything here. So I will just ping my Orc army. It will grow each time, so that's not actually a problem. The goal is to now find a wasteland, blow this up, and kill my opponent. I don't think I like their sequence. Well, I guess they were doing it to save the life. I was thinking about like the mana from Cloudpost, but like, is that 1 additional mana all that relevant when you still have this much? Probably not. Echoing Deeps, so that can become a copy of a land in a graveyard, which means a Glimmer Post here to keep this around for a little bit longer. So let's draw and find Wasteland. That's not Wasteland. This is on combat damage and the damage would be prevented. I don't think I am playing out this additional creature. I get a +1/+1 counter, but we're currently in prison. My opponent loses their life for the ring still, then they pay their life for their Glacial Chasm. I am stopping searching from something like an Eye of Ugin. I am making a very thick orc. Vexing Bobble's fine. I'm just taking their redraws. My orc gets bigger. All right, we're chilling. I need a wasteland. That is not a wasteland, but it is sort of a useful card still. So that one I'll play. I'll do that. I'll eat the Glimmer Post that's in graveyard, so my opponent can't use that to gain life. Damage is being prevented by Glacial Chasm still. So now my opponent loses 3, going to 4, draws their cards. Bowmaster triggers happen. Glacial Chasm currently in play, very, very notably. Now my opponent is going to probably sacrifice this land here, but copy it with their caves. So my opponent needs to get a Glacial Chasm into play to not die, and then they need to play a new One Ring as to not die to those triggers. That's certainly doable with the resources that they have. All right, so my opponent is interested in getting rid of my opposition agent. Sure. All right, we have a Sowing Mycos spawn. My opponent can get a new land. There's a new Cloud Post. 4 mana, it is a new copy of the One Ring. That fogs for a turn. You've got protection from everything. Tabernacle, sure. I can potentially just eat this Glacial Chasm out of the graveyard here. We have Revolt. Let's take out a Sowing Mycos spawn while I have mana. I think for this first turn cycle here, I am going to go ahead and Dark Ritual to keep more creatures around for this first turn cycle, even if I end up losing them later. I don't really need to do anything else with my mana. I can just keep an Orcish Bowmasters around for my opponent's turn so they can't activate this willy-nilly without consequences, and then I can sack some things appropriately later. On pay for all 5. So my opponent is drawing. They still have protection from everything, so I can't target them. I will still go ahead and do this. Dauthi Voidwalker, sure. Beginning of combat. Emperor of Bones. Take out Glacial Chasm. Call it a turn. So my opponent is guaranteed taking 1 from the One Ring. It's 2 more if Bowmaster remains in play. Arn's bad. Mycosynth Lattice, sure. Oh, Mycosynth Lattice Tabernacle. Yeah, that is a way to beat the onboard stuff. Sure, so I don't get to activate these. And now we just see if my opponent dies to their One Ring. So I have no other plays this turn, obviously. These don't work. My opponent loses 1 here. Arn plus on the One Ring is fine. You can hit me with that. I am winning that race. Mycosynth Lattice did not attack instead. Oh, I see. That's cute. Legendary creature, bounce with Karakas. That one hasn't come up before in all the games that I've played, I don't think. All right. At this point, my opponent's not dying to their own stuff anymore. I am comfortable conceding. We fell just short there. So Damping Sphere is normally played for the anti-storm aspect, but we can use this to make my opponent's lands considerably worse. Disruptor Flute has some text for some things like Karn or the One Ring, as does Null Rod. Port of Locthwain is not crazy. Fatal Push is not fantastic. This could probably go. Vexing Bobble is not fantastic. That can probably go. This gets me to enough cards already. Liliana's not super strong. I could keep another Fatal Push or 2 for taking out like Sowing Mycos spawns. A bunch of my creatures just have evasion though, so it's just a question of like, is this better than other things in my deck? It might be better than this. Let's try this as our starting point. So I have a disruptive card into a creature or into a wasteland. Hand's not overly exciting, but is fine. See what our opponent is working with after their mulligan. I have multiple creatures. Dismember is whatever. It's one of the 4 drops. Sowing Mycos spawn is currently much harder to cast. I'm going to go ahead and take the Karn here. Once Upon a Time off the top is really good for my opponent. It gives them an opportunity to find a Planar Nexus for Urza Saga or otherwise green mana for Sowing Mycos spawn. Yeah, they found Planar Nexus for Urza's Tower. That Damping Sphere is a hell of a drug then. Yeah, I'll just do that immediately. Seems good. I am not currently multi-spelling with this hand anyway. Loud Post, gone. So do I want Goyf or Dauthi Voidwalker? I probably want Dauthi Voidwalker plus Wasteland this turn. So let's do that. If this Damping Sphere leaves play, I am more immediately afraid of Urza's Tower. I fucking did this wrong. This is letting my opponent... No, actually I did this right, because this lets my opponent dismember Dauthi Voidwalker, which I actually want, so that this creature lives. Maybe that's not true. If I force them to do it on their turn, no, that doesn't change anything. I never want this creature dying to that dismember. Ooh, a swords is rough. I like dismember plus swords just happens. Okay, this is not fantastic here. It's stopping a copy of the One Ring from being top decked. It still has like some degree of relevant text. Stops Vexing Baubles from being cycled, although I imagine Vexing Bauble has gone out for this. My opponent is drawing hotter than the sun over there. I'll get a basic swamp out of the deck now. Like Once Upon a Time off the top, Swords off the top, Boseiju off the top, Planar Nexus off the top, into Sowing Lycospawn, Surveil. Bloodstained Mire, very bad. Okay, I mean, that is great. And we'll just see kind of who top decks better from here. My opponent has one turn of blocks before I start doing cool things. I don't want to fetch to thin because I have the 1 mana black creature in my deck that gets bigger. That's a little weird. I think my opponent's going to block though. 6 life is a lot. Stopping a card draw is a lot. Now we drop the castle on an empty board. I am the pretty princess. I draw my extra card here. That's not what I am looking for. Or no, I am the monarch. No, that's fine. Get a swamp. So at this point, there's only 1 land remaining in the deck that's fetchable. Sort of weird. Okay, so opponent prevents the damage, meaning that this does not actually draw cards currently. A wasteland would be real cool. Sheoldred's Edict, not good. I'll draw my extra card. It is that last swamp, which is very funny. Yavimaya. Disruptor Flute is fine. Do your thing. Opponent naming Wasteland. You've got it. I am, I guess, going to put another one of these in play. I guess I will put a Null Rod in play. Draw an extra card at end of turn. Glacial Chasm. Doing some serious work against my just general deck construction. Not cycling this. We're out of swamps. I'll cast this Thoughtseize for the information. This information is worth 2 life to me. It's probably not a particularly powerful card. I don't know that I want to cast this. I don't think I want to lean too badly into All Is Dust here, and I think I want to have mana available for something like an opposition agent if I would happen to draw one. The Glacial Chasm is going away in this next turn cycle. Either one of these connecting is lethal. I don't think I'm going to play another card. I'm just going to keep some stuff back. 2 lethal threats seems like enough. These Monarch draws have not been kind. It's just a Fog. Double Null Rod. But a Fog is what my opponent needs right now. It just gives them another draw at an All Is Dust power level card, and I think I will... I can already play 2 threats if my opponent does something like All Is Dust. I think I want to have lethal through Ulamog, which is what this Stalker does. I didn't do math to see if my opponent actually had enough mana. So 3, 6, 7, 8, 9. No, they did not. I did not need to do lethal through Ulamog then. All right, got there. Do I want 1 out to Disruptor Flute? I don't think that's super likely to line up well. Let's call this good enough. This hand looks solid. I'm going to keep this one. Planar Nexus has made Urza's Saga into an incredibly scary card. I think I am probably just going to snap off an immediate Wasteland on that rather than messing around with like trying to hit a land that could, emphasis on could, be better. That's why we didn't mess around with it. So let's fetch, grab a swamp, and I'm just looking to disrupt here. Well, my Wasteland was really effing good. That's for sure. Disruptor Flute on the One Ring is going to be very good. I think I'm just taking a Spirit Guide here. Spirit Guide into Ancient Stirrings. My opponent finds Urza's Tower. Okay, that is quite frustrating. I'm always fetching, and I'm thinking about which one of my cards I am doing this turn. I think it's just Damping Sphere, and I let my opponent draw a couple more cards with the One Ring. I don't think I want them to have, like, Sowing Mycospawn or Karn immediately as well. It means that double spelling from here is very difficult. Sure. That's just 1 mana. Now, admittedly, my opponent just getting to 4 mana and doing these things is not great for me. I don't think I can let my opponent keep drawing cards, though. So, do we dodge our opponent getting the 4th land as well? They may already have it. Okay, they are just going to hit me with the One Ring. That's annoying. Opponent does not have enough mana for Sowing Mycospawn yet. Can't play multiple spells. I think I just need to play something that threatens Karn, hope to draw a land, play the Goyf. Opponent is losing slightly less life than I am to that One Ring. Karn Tutor package is a problem. Yeah, my opponent's lucky top deck after that Thoughtseize was really rough. Because I think if I get that Damping Sphere down, and then I get the Disruptor Flute down before that happens, I think we're just good. Oh, does my opponent have swords? Sure. I think I'm just going to concede this one here. I think this one is lost. All right, I am keeping sort of a medium power level here. As long as the Dark Ritual resolves, my hand is probably reasonable to good, and I have a few different ways to play it out. A lot of this depends on how good I think Dauthi Voidwalker is going to be, and my answer is very good. Let's see if I just die on turn 1, though. No, my opponent will turn 1 me here. Okay, they will probably turn 1 me. Sometimes they die to their own stuff, and I get to Orcish Bowmasters kill my opponent, but the vast majority of the time this results in me dying instantly. Opponent's at 1, they have 1 mana already. As long as they hit a Born Upon a Wind, they are good. Dark Ritual, some more mana, red mana. There's a land that has like a discard draw effect on it that they might be about to use if they produced red mana here. So, our opponent killed themselves. They drew 19 cards, and this makes you skip your draw step, so this is why I crap on Necrodominance as a archetype. I think this is about the 4th time that this has happened on camera on this channel. Now, in bad news, we sure don't have a ton that interacts with our opponent here. And a lot of the stuff we do have requires us getting a turn. I fully expect to lose this next game, and then we hope that Thoughtseize or Vexing Bauble or Dark Ritual plus a 2-drop happens in a meaningful way for the next game. All right, pushes out, cuts out, Liliana out, Edicts out. That leaves me with Dudes and Things. Powder Keg is not the most impressive card. Could occasionally blow up some artifact mana, but it's a bit of a stretch. I don't think Fairy is relevant versus the current builds. Actually, I guess, no, the Cabal Ritual threshold thing is so unlikely to matter. I don't know. It's, I guess, something. Like, these don't matter. I can trim a random threat. Oh, no. I can keep you. And then I can play the Powder Keg when I'm on the play. Vexing Bauble is cool. I don't have any black mana here. I don't think this is good enough. I'm going to mulligan. I mean, this is about as good as we could be hoping for. I'm going to keep this one, pitching a Dauthi Voidwalker, and probably just get turned 1. My opponent kept a 7. I think Thoughtseize is better than Vexing Bauble. My opponent is very, very reliant on one specific card for their deck to function, so I am going to try to take that one specific card. Oh, my opponent had the turn 1, right? Just Vault, Spirit Guide, Manamorphose, Black, Lotus Petal. They had a turn 1 attempt and didn't go for it. I guess they wanted to wait, try to find some disruption or have some extra mana available. But at this point I get, oh gosh, that's really good. So fetch. I get to start with a Thoughtseize, just take something else out of their hand that's relevant. Summoner's Pact is stopped by Vexing Bauble, so we'll just take some raw mana here with a Spirit Guide, and then drop Vexing Bauble to stop Pax and Lotus Petal. Unless my opponent has some sort of sideboard pivot here, it seems a little tough from here. Opponent has 1 unknown card. I think I'm gonna go ahead and just put a clock into play. I can Thoughtseize next turn. The Graveyard Hate again is just like super, super minor. Yeah. This thing, put any number of cards from your hand on the bottom of your library, then draw that many cards plus 1. That is a way of cycling through your deck when you don't draw the necessary things. 17. I think I will Thoughtseize this turn. Manamorphose, gone. All right, so if I don't draw a land, okay, I drew the land. I think I'm just kind of interested in playing the Orcish Bowmasters though. It represents some damage if my opponent Manamorphoses. It's not super relevant versus the combo. It is a 1 damage immediately, maybe more than 1 damage immediately though. Never killing next turn. I hit for 5 next turn. I think Bowmasters is fine. So we'll Bowmasters. Opponent did not respond with a Manamorphose. So I'll ping them. Vexing Bauble, not interested in cracking that. Go to combat. Now, even if my opponent gets Necrodominance into play, they don't actually get to draw that many cards. And I have very, very much lethal damage next turn. Yeah, I like something like the Epic Storm much, much better than I like the Necrodominance deck. And the tournament results are strongly suggesting that the Necrodominance deck is not actually competitive. All right, I have a medium hand here. I would really like another threat. Okay, so I don't want to get my Bowmastered here. I'm probably going to just take Orcish Bowmasters and then just be cognizant of days this game. I'm not hyper aggressive here. Bobble's fine. My opponent can look at the top card of my library, get a feel for what I am playing, and then make their decision from there about like what land they are fetching, like whether this is going to be an Underground Sea or not. We are probably interested in just wastelanding this Underground Sea immediately. We want to keep our opponent off of Psychic Frog. I'm so scared of Psychic Frog that I even considered taking Ponder in their opening hand. Dauthi Voidwalker is a great card. I don't think I am playing that immediately. I think I am going to go ahead and restart in terms of mana development. Murktide Regent and Psychic Frog are things that I care about. If I can get a Dauthi Voidwalker down, that's cool. I might intentionally play a Dazeable spell so my opponent has to pick back up a land and keep them off of playing a Psychic Frog or Murktide Regent quickly. Murktide Regent less scary. The graveyard's not very full of instants and sorceries right now. But we don't want to see a 1-mana threat such as Nethergoyf here. That's a nuisance. Makes my Sheoldred's Edict much worse. So, am I offering a card up to the Daze Gods? If I don't, Psychic Frog is a massive problem. Still going to be a massive problem later. Let's try to play around Daze to some extent. Might just play a Sheoldred's Edict as Daze bait. I don't know, maybe I can set up a Dauthi Voidwalker Resolves into Sheoldred's Edict, remove Nethergoyf line. I'll take 4 for now. All right, we're chilling. I think I'm good with that. That's incredibly good. That's incredibly good because the other land is a basic swamp. So once Underground Sea is taken out, Daze is no longer live. We may see our opponent cast a spell and daze their own spell to return an Underground Sea to hand. They did not do that. There is a fatal push on their own Nethergoyf. They are going to daze that to save their Underground Sea. So now, when my spell is incredibly likely to resolve, am I just removing the Goyf, short-term play, or am I trying to set up a Dauthi Voidwalker? This thing is massive. It is a 5/6, now that instants are in there as well. I could also just play Orcish Bowmasters, get a chump block with it while making cantrips worse. I'm so fucking afraid of Psychic Frog, though. Like, if I Dauthi Voidwalker and then my opponent plays Psychic Frog, I am just dying to damage. If I play Bowmasters and my opponent has another Bowmasters, that play is pretty rough. Sheoldred's Edict also pretty bad versus Bowmasters. Let's go this route. Just kind of feels like what I am doing is slow here. We'll see how this all goes. So we fog this attack, effectively gaining 5 life with that Bowmaster trigger. It's a Psychic Frog. That's not great. So unfortunately, none of my lines were good against Psychic Frog. The Bowmaster line included. That thing's flying. It's evasive. I guess I am playing an Edict to kind of help stop the bleeding in the short term. I don't have a long-term solution to what's happening here. Please sacrifice a non-token creature. So yeah, this is just getting rid of this and sending it to the graveyard. It'll come back. These are 2 things that are both fighting for graveyard space though. Force of Negation, pitching Ponder. That's really bad. So now my opponent has unchecked Psychic Frog and a 5/6 creature. I just did not have time to get Dauthi Voidwalker down. This is a healthy Magic card. Enjoy it until, what is it, December 16th or something like that? It is very funny to me that my anti-graveyard hate cards are doing nothing against my opponent's graveyard synergy cards. My opponent is not attacking with Psychic Frog. Their reasoning is probably if they attack with Psychic Frog, I get a 1/1 that gets to block this. So yeah. I'm just going to die to Psychic Frog next turn though, right? Draw cards, discard is no bueno. So let's play a Dauthi Voidwalker. I think I need to play another Dauthi Voidwalker into Daze so that I don't have to give up Orcish Bowmasters immediately. Yeah, this was an intentional trade. So now I am not just facing down lethal. So I have lines that don't involve chumping with Orcish Bowmasters this turn. I think I'm taking 7 and going to 1. Dead to an Orcish Bowmasters, but that's already true pre-combat, right? Because my opponent just Bowmasters this and I die. Blooded Strand and a Ponder. Sure. Oh, I just miscounted. My bad. Game was over anyway. My sideboard's not great versus this. I'm basically replaying my game 1 deck. Like, I could do something like Disruptor Flute for Psychic Frog. That does not feel like a good use of my resources. I could Plague Engineer. That's not fantastic. Yeah, I don't think I am sideboarding. I am not in love with that. I don't think I want to Fairy Macabre to try to mess with Nethergoyfs. That doesn't feel like the best expenditure of my resources. I do not like how it feels like this is lining up versus Psychic Frog. I don't think we have enough removal. This is a fine hand. I am always playing Dark Ritual on turn 1, and then the question from there is, how do I sequence the cards afterwards? I can play threat, but then like Force of Will type things matter. I think I Thoughtseize to make a game plan and probably end up playing Bowmasters. Negative. Bowmasters happens on my next turn to kill a Delver. We'll take a Fatal Push from that hand, and then inefficiently play the Stalker. We waste a mana, but we still got to kind of get ahead on tempo, and unless my opponent top decks a counter spell specifically, we know that our Orcish Bowmaster does a lot of work. My opponent is just like kind of incentivized to play out their Delver. So fetch, Bowboy. This is a Bowboy that is coming in under Brainstorm, kill Delver, punchies, 2 damage, and then we grow once at end step. The Brainstorm's dead. The Delver is very, very slow relative to everything else that's happening with my hand. Ah, that asshole. Okay, so now my smaller creatures can't attack. This is still reasonable. Again, some of this is reliant on my opponent not having drawn a counterspell. They didn't draw one last turn. Hopefully they did not draw one this turn. The Psychic Frog was probably a draw, so this is likely safe. And yeah, all right, cool, we're in play. We scale up this creature. I think we are far enough ahead that we don't lose to the Psychic Frog. Notice how I have to say think when I have curved out on creatures, and there is still a question about whether Psychic Frog just is better than my entire board. Okay, cool. Let's cast this Bauble. I think it's fine to surveil land pre-combat in case it grows my friend over here. Fatal Push. There's already an instant in my graveyard. I am fine drawing this. I may even draw it immediately with Vexing Bauble, as doing so grows this. Let's do that. Let's attempt to take out a Psychic Frog before anything else happens here. Big creature, big creature, big creature, 5-10 damage, that's fine. All right, we've got something, maybe an Orcish Bowmasters. It would be not great timing for an Orcish Bowmasters. A Petty Theft, sure. My opponent goes down to 7. This continues to grow. It's nearly lethal on its own at this point. Delver does not flip. That means that my opponent is finding creatures, which is good for them. And a Psychic Frog, sure. Play Stalker, sacrifice Stalker, kill Delver. If my opponent wants to then double block, they lose Psychic Frog. Actually, already creature in their graveyard for Nethergoyf math. Nethergoyf math could change with Psychic Frog. Discard. No. Brainstorm is their last card. I could also just play this a little more patiently. This 5/6 Death Touch Lifelinker is a really big deal. I kind of want to put that in play. Let's gear up for a larger combat step later. I don't know, I can still just attack with this. Taking the Psychic Frog out of play is a win. Yeah, we will kill the Psychic Frog here. Kill Frog. Now I have lost a card from play, meaning that this is going to scale up this turn as well. So now hopefully this threat just carries us through the remainder of the game. Delver does not flip. Stop drawing those. Bowmasters is great. So I send this in, and I send this in. Yeah, I can also just kill this to kill Psychic Frog. I didn't do math to see if I just had deterministic lethal if I made this swing with these two as well. All right, we are just seeing a chump here. I am ultimately fine with that. I gain 5. How do I feel about killing Psychic Frog? I'm fine with that. Let's just do that while we know that that works. We're just trying to grind our opponent out. We've got Bowmasters, so that opposing cantrips are not great. My opponent, ooh, that's great for me. So in response to that trigger in my upkeep, I will Bowmaster them. I'm just not going to give up that value. I could use it to ping this, but it can only block creatures with flying, so I don't super care about it right now. They take their draw, double Bowmaster triggers. Yeah, cool. I am working so hard to keep up with Psychic Frog here. Yeah, I don't think I like the prospects of my sideboard cards here. I'm just gonna continue. I have reasonable cards here and not enough mana. I am a little land light in the deck, generally speaking. I'm going to keep this, and I'm keeping this hoping that Vexing Bauble resolves and shuts off a decent number of my opponent's cards before they come down. All right, so my opponent targets themselves to make decisions about Before. Fuck you, Vexing Bobble. Before. Thoughtseize, absolutely not what we are looking for. I am fine playing Vexing Bobble. We can still shut off the Daze and Force of Will type cards, potentially. But man, what a massive play draw difference here. Target themselves for Polluted Delta purposes again. Target me this time for information. Oh no fetch land cracking here. Wasteland is very bad for me if I don't draw another land. So the card that I play this turn is Dazeable with Hardcast Daze. If I play a 2-drop, I would love my Wasteland to hit my opponent's blue or black source. That's a little hard to set up. I'm going to try to set it up by doing this. Because if my opponent has a Daze, they fetch Hardcast Daze to counter the Thoughtseize, and then if this is an Underground Sea, I get to Wasteland it. Okay, so I have stopped a Force of Will. My opponent is potentially going to end of turn Brazen Borrower and bounce my Vexing Bobble. Psychic Frog is not currently castable. Dauthi Voidwalker is currently not castable. Force of Will is currently not castable. If I take Brazen Borrower, there is a decent degree of risk here of these cards being a pain in the butt later, but then I never have to worry about Force of Will. So this Thoughtseize is sort of a 2-for-1. We're gonna try this. Now I am going to play Wasteland, pass turn. My opponent will probably Wasteland my Wasteland. Negative. They do not. So am I interested in Wastelanding their Wasteland? Most of the things that matter in their deck are colored pips. Okay, so now they will Wasteland my Wasteland, at which point I will Wasteland your Polluted Delta and force the fetch, which you're going to do anyway. There's Delver, there's Wasteland. I can Fatal Push this. Then we work towards Murderous Cut. And I will Fatal Push immediately, I think. Actually, is Thoughtseize worth it to just never have Psychic Frog hit play? Let's have Psychic Frog never hit play. I think that's fine. Well, fuck me. Go Psychic Frog. That's inconvenient. Some portion of the time I will just get out-tempoed by these cards. So does that mean that was a land? 15... It's another Delver, sure. I can clear the board. I could put a 4/5 lifelinker into play. How do you read combat damage to a player? You may mill that many cards. If you do, you may put a creature card. So I can't use this to get a land drop. I think I'm into this though. I can spread the removal out over a few turns on these creatures. Blind flipping Delvers immediately is like not the best for me, but I am gaining 5 life per turn cycle, hopefully. Delvers, not flipping. Okay, so a Psychic Frog can now come down. That's fine though. I have Fatal Push style answers for that, and we know the exact contents of my opponent's hand. Yet basic. Fatal Push a Psychic Frog. Just get that out of there. Go to combat. Attack for 5. See if my opponent wants to lose a Delver to prevent this trigger. My opponent has basic Island. That doesn't cast this Dauthi Voidwalker. Okay, so my opponent is doing a chump block here. I could Murderous Cut this Delver immediately. I think I am more interested in Murderous cutting another Psychic Frog or potentially the Dauthi Voidwalker if that makes it into play. Delver trigger. Delver flips to Ponder. So now my opponent can try to look for an answer to this creature. They took a land to play Dauthi Voidwalker, which is like perfectly reasonable, but is not going to end up working out for them. I take 3. Oh, I Fatal Push. That's fantastic. So I can save the Murderous Cut for later in case that difference is relevant. This is 7 immediate damage. Fantastic. Yes, I will mill 5 cards. I will return an Orcish Bowmasters to hand. I think I'm okay cutting the Delver here. Sorcery's over there, right? Yeah, there's a Ponder over there. Instant land, Murderous Cut. Throw my creature as well. And I have Sheoldred's Edict for whatever creature my opponent could possibly play. That was not fun, but damn it, we got there. All right, I've eaten dinner. I have returned for more mono black action. We have a solid opening hand. We are hoping the Wasteland will be good a little bit later on. It's not good immediately. When I see Snow-Covered Island in this current metagame, my thought is that my opponent is going to be playing an Ice Fang Coatl deck list. That's kind of where I am at thought-wise. My Thoughtseizes are going to line up very poorly. My Thoughtseizes are going to line up very poorly versus this Tamiyo, as Tamiyo is going to generate a card worth of value each turn. We can potentially take something cool like a Psychic Frog here that is coming down early. I guess the plan is win with a Liliana ultimate. So what's the disaster case? My opponent draws Brainstorm and fixes their hand, in which case the Entreat going back in the deck is kind of bad. Entreat in graveyard means that Mystic Sanctuary can put it back on top. I think I'm just going to take the Force of Will here. This Tamiyo is real good though. Tamiyo was one of the cards I highlighted in my metagame prediction videos as like something that would probably actively become stronger. All right, I took that one. And my opponent they don't have anything to do with their mana right now other than crack these clues, but like that is perfectly fine. And you can see that they are willing to just do it immediately, play around something like an Orcish Bowmasters. Well, let's just miss those. This doesn't feel great, but Thoughtseize target you. So Mystic Sanctuary is pretty far away. Take Terminus, produce my own creature so that I can pressure a Planeswalker if my opponent ends up flipping this by drawing something like a Brainstorm. Why did you get grayed out? That is weird visually. I mean, it happens. Okay, it is just Sky Control, meaning that 4th Aerlingas is something that we should be kind of thinking about in the back of our minds. There's card draw number 2 for Tamiyo. My opponent did not leave open blue to potentially flip Tamiyo. Now what? I think we attack first before doing anything else. 16. Is my opponent going to cycle this end of turn? Like, will I get them with Opposition Agent? But my Liliana is really likely to resolve right now. I think I am just going to cast this. Well, fuck me, I guess. We do get to grow our creature. Tamiyo is doing just so much work here. Don't love that for me. Opponent gets to just keep attacking with this. The third Thoughtseize was such a kick in the teeth here. Emperor of Bones. No creatures in graveyard, though. I think I like playing multiple creatures this turn. Let's Wasteland a Tundra. That puts a land into the graveyard. We'll play Emperor of Bones and the Stalker. When I go to combat, I am going to eat Terminus out of that graveyard. Now that can't come back with something like a Mystic Sanctuary later on. Fairy pluses. Ponder. My opponent can now crack a clue token and create a Planeswalker. It is a Swords to Plowshares on my creature instead. Tamiyo is going to just keep generating value. My Stalker can kill that Teferi, which is nice, but just no removal spell all game is brutal. That does not do much here. Kill Teferi. Goodbye. Now I can do stuff at instant speed again. Do I want to Thoughtseize and take another card? Let's see what's going on over there. These Thoughtseizes are just awful. Oh my god, glad we did that. Take the Aerlingas, and then we'll pass the turn. I'm going to Opposition Agent at the end of my opponent's turn in all likelihood. I want to give them a chance to fetch, and I get a little bit of value off Opposition Agent, and I don't necessarily want to just get caught by something like just Terminus off the top. No attack there. I mean, I'm going to play another thing. It seems like my opponent is just going to crack a clue. They're just kind of waiting to see if I do something with like a Bowmaster or something. Okay, that's pretty good. That's a menace creature. It's Terminus instead. Unfortunate. Well, I was slightly off. It's worse. Now my opponent can play a new Tamiyo. I will Fatal Push that. Fatal Push never kills a 5-drop. So yeah, the lifelink here is real rough. It's not doing me any favors. I'm going to Surveil now for the purposes of growing my Stalker. Ooh, yeah, I'm into that one. If I attack with both and my opponent blocks the Opposition Agent, I could trade both of my creatures for the Triumph and then play the Barrowgoyf on an empty board. This just goes back on top. I think I'm not interested in that exchange. All right, get bigger. I want to take some card draw. Opposition Agent blocking that Scalding Tarn. Opponent does not realize that. I get to see their deck. Okay, so we have a Snapcaster Mage, a couple of Jaces, Supreme Verdict, Blood Moons. So it is most important for me to remove a white source here. I'm going to be taking that Tundra, please. Yeah, I think I'm just going to take this hit. Go to 9, go to combat, attack for 6 back. So I do gain a little bit. Opponent's at 9. Play my Tundra. Drop a Barrowgoyf. So this is currently winning combat with Triumph. My opponent has exile-based removal, like that. That's rough. Don't really take any damage in this turn cycle. It's a gain 5, lose 5, but the next turn cycle is pretty bad for me. I'm at 9. I think we are just overwhelmed here. Oh, man, I really don't want to 2-for-1 myself. I don't really think I can take 7. I'm not going to attack. We'll see how my opponent views this situation. I should have held my swamp in hand. Represent a combat trick. That's fine. The Warhammer 40k art, I believe. That's rough. Fetching is now on the table. No longer can trade with this. Means I effectively missed 3 points of damage. I'll take that hit for 5. Triumph is a problem for this deck. So we'll push that Snapcaster Mage. Not gonna jump block. I'll go to 2. Then hopefully we find an out to that. I think we got a little unlucky in this game. Like, drawing the third Thoughtseize was rough. My opponent having that Force of Will with, I think, 1 unknown card was rough. The white removal spell for Barrowgoyf was rough. But I think, generally speaking, my opponent's deck is going to line up well versus mine. I'm at 2. That's not going to do it. I could sacrifice this or chump block with this to live 1 more turn, but I don't think I am really winning from here. I don't think my sideboard options are super good. I'm into Castle Lochtwain. I think I am into Disruptor Flute as a way to stop Planeswalkers. This does not hit Planeswalker Tamiyo. I don't think I'm into that. I don't think I'm into Damping Sphere. So I have, what? These as outs to not great versus Entreat. I probably don't want to play this card. Thoughtseizes don't feel very good, but sometimes take a critical card. The Tamiyo is kind of frustrating because I do not want Fatal Push against any of the other cards in my opponent's deck other than Tamiyo. Like, these help with Tamiyo a bit, but the backside more so than the front. I think I am going to keep a Miser's Thoughtseize. It's not the end of the world if I draw one, but in multiples it's so bad. This has no threat in it, and I am very much the beatdown. I think I just lose too much by not playing anything aggressive in the early turns of the game. This is not a recipe for success. Like, the Wasteland is not good. The Bowmaster is fine. It's not enough to win on its own. I'm going to go to 5 and try to come up with a better game plan. This is not great. Opponent's a fan of the channel. Yet they bully me with their giant lifelinker. Honestly, I don't blame you. That card's super fun. Vexing Bauble. I don't think Vexing Bauble is, like, particularly good here. Like, it has text and everything, but some portion of the time my opponent is even going to be boarding out Force of Wills. I'm just going to pass the turn here. I could just surveil land here rather than play Bowmasters. I think I am going to do that. A little frustrating, though, because any sort of draw-go stuff is just very favorable to my opponent. That is not a threat right now. I can just go to graveyard. Let's try to draw something else. That's a something else. Although, honestly, that's just Swords to Plowshares food. I'll pass turn. Not immediately, at least. Fuck. Yeah, that's not great. And ping. The good news is, if I randomly find a removal spell, it's usable immediately. I think this is just play another Vexing Bauble to back up this one so that I can start using them as card draws, and we'll just give our opponent a little love tap here. It's not super efficient. We'll throw an Orc in front of the Triumph. We can make a new Orc with another Bowmasters while hopefully pushing a little bit of damage. Okay, so my opponent thinks that I have removal. Sure. Not removal. Graveyard-oriented synergies, and, like, honestly, that's fair. And probably something that you should think. So this stops my smaller creatures from reasonably attacking. Let's cycle one of these. I mean, that is a play in Magic the Gathering. It's big already. Force of Will is not on. I am set up for, like, the worst Terminus blowout in the world, though. Menace. Opponent's at 20. I scale up my Stalker. Opponent's deck is doing so crazy fucking well at operating unlimited resources. I'm just gonna block that. I'm not interested in losing my Orcish Bowmasters right now. Fuck. I think I get rid of Vexing Bauble. I think I just have to find an answer to this, or I'm going to fucking die. Opponent's at 21, I scale this up yet again. I could sacrifice this to kill a Containment Priest if I wanted. I don't think I want. Opponent's just plussing. 3, 4, 5. Not the best use of my resources, but I think I accept. It's not like we're really trying to kill my up-tilt opponent in terms of life total right now. Hit to Fairy. Am I interested in Wasteland, my own Wasteland, to keep scaling this in hopes that that can answer Triumph? I believe that I am. Yes, I am wastelanding targeting itself. That is intentional. So we've got a 4/4 now. Life's bad. Okay, that was the wrong timing to do that, because I can now sacrifice this to kill Containment Priest, or fog a little bit more damage, but I think I'm going to just kill the creature here. Docker flavor text, confirmed, good. It doesn't get to kill the Triumph though. My opponent missed 2 points of damage this turn. Again though, life totals aren't really what this game is about. Okay, deck. I'm not getting rid of the Orcish Bowmasters. This is the 4th mana. This starts to mean that things like Jace the Mind Sculptor can happen. I would love for my opponent to play a Jace the Mind Sculptor and then Brainstorm. I feel very strongly that that is the correct line to do. Wrath of the Skies. So that gets to kill my Orcish Bowmasters, clearing the board. My opponent's cantrips are back online. I am at 3 life. I am dead on board unless I draw one of my very few outs to Triumph of St. Catherine. Yikes. You're gonna surgical me? Opponent just says sweet, as in it worked. No. We are wastelanding ourselves on the way out here. Wasteland, target me. Hold priority, concede game. We still end up positive in the league though. Okay, so how do we feel about this one? Medium. I think this deck is okay. I think there's a couple of problems with the deck list. Number one, I don't think the deck list is built with enough respect on Psychic Frog. So this is a 60 card base deck list, right? So we have 3 Fatal Push and a Murderous Cut in the main deck that kills Psychic Frog, and a Shoulder's Edict that can maybe get it if something like a Tameo isn't played out, or a Bowmaster or something isn't played out that gets in the way of this removal spell. I don't think this is enough, and I don't think the sideboard respects Psychic Frog appropriately. I think things like Long Goodbye that have it's like Split Second or Uncounterable, I forget exactly what the text is, that just kill Psychic Frog just 100% of the time are good. I don't think I am in love with the trolls without any Animate Dead, Reanimate stuff to go with them. I think we reached the point where this could be hard castable once in the league, but I'm not sold on this as a slot. I'm also not sold on this card. It's just not killing things that need to die. This is not killing a Psychic Frog. This is not killing a Tameo. This is not hindering a Tameo. This is probably not hindering a Psychic Frog either. So I wouldn't mind this becoming a Liliana of the Veil if you want a Planeswalker. I think I like a 4th Fatal Push in the main deck. I think I like a couple of Long Goodbyes in the sideboard. I wonder if we want another source of card advantage. Like, I wanted another card like this throughout the league. Maybe that's just supposed to be more copies of Emperor of Bones. Like, maybe that is how I get my card advantage. I'm a little mana tight though. Like, we are a 19 land wasteland deck, and sometimes we have this burst mana at the beginning of the game. I think we have enough different card types hitting the graveyard for Nethergoyf to be good. I don't think we have enough mana for something like Exsanguinator Cavalry. I don't know that we want to be an Ancient Tomb deck to power some of these things out faster if we're also trying to play like Dauthi Voidwalker and multiple black pip cards. So I think this is probably a fine start to a deck that is going to need a little bit of iteration to get to somewhere good. So Keith, you get the shaky thumbs up for your deck building here, I think. I think this is solid, but not great. And ultimately, I think the problem about building around Barrowgoyf is that Psychic Frog costs 2 mana and this costs 3. Sometimes you are going to exhaust your opponent of resources, and this like 5/6 life-linking, death-touching Tarmogoyf from hell is going to take over games, and it's going to feel really good. And then other times it's going to be like, oh, Brazen Borrower, oh, Fatal Push, oh, Dismember, hit you for 5 with Psychic Frog, draw a card. I think if the metagame is all about drawing cards with Psychic Frogs and Tameos and such, being the Thoughtseize deck is maybe not going to be the best thing in the world. Maybe you can put a couple more threats into the main deck, move the Thoughtseizes to the sideboard, play them when you play against combo. Play like a 4th Vexing Bauble, 3 more threats, preferably something that can come down on turn 1. I think that's kind of where my head's at. Folks, if you have thoughts about this mono black deck list, throw them down in the comments below. I'm sure Keith would love to hear them. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day. If you need some cards, toamagic.com, promo code ThrabenU will save you a bit on your order. All right, see ya.